Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Tetzel. This podcast starts now.
All right. Well, welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Tetzel, and we do have a special guest, Jake McKee. He's the founder of Dinner 5 at Jake McKee Consulting. Did I get that right, Jake?
You did. Absolutely.
Oh, sweet. Well, welcome to Peers Over Beers.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a while. Been a while coming, I should say.
It's been a while coming because actually I don't think we've ever had you on Peers Over Beers, and really glad that you got to come on. Tell us a little bit about this Dinner 5 thing, because it's not really how we met, but I've been to a couple of those and really have enjoyed Dinner 5.
Yeah, so I'll tell you just a little bit of background and story as a way to set up what Dinner 5 actually is, because it's important to understand how it came to be as well. But I've been doing community work in various forms at companies like Lego and Apple, and for clients like Southwest and Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Canon Camera, a bunch of people over the years in a bunch of different forms and fashions. And so I got coming on 25 years of community experience now, right?
Seems like a long time.
And long time. And I always joke that I've been doing community since that meant convincing clients to put an email address on their website. That was a hard sell back in the day, right? Well, what happens if people contact us? Well, dude, you respond. That conversation was literally one I had more than once.
Yeah.
But after doing it this long, a couple of years back, I had left two different events, one right after the other, and there was a lot of really great content, but it was all very targeted to the folks who were showing up, which were people had been in the industry a few months or maybe a few years. And I just kept looking around and saying, where's my peers, right? Where are the other senior folks who've been doing this a long time? And I was complaining. The first one was in October, next one was in November, and in December I was sitting around 2 days after Christmas and telling a buddy of mine, my trials and tribulations about all this. And he said, well, what would you want to do? And I said, man, I just want people to have as much experience as me sitting around my kitchen table with pizza and beers and talking community dirt.
Yeah.
And he said, well, then why don't you do that? My head exploded for a minute, and I went, well, yeah, that's a good point. So
why don't I do it?
Yeah, why don't I do it? And I had several conversations between the return to work and that 2 days after Christmas conversation with my buddy Steve. And I reached out to a few senior community folks and said, hey, would something like this be of interest? And they all said, yeah, that's great. And I tried very hard to convince them to do it. Nobody said, sure, I'll pick up the mantle. They all said, great, when you start it, I'll be happy to join. And I was like, man, I guess I got to start it now, right?
Yeah.
And so January 15th or something, 20th, somewhere in there, that year, had the first Dinner 5, and it was in person. Did in-person events for a year, and then pandemic hit. I've been doing virtual events for the last 2 plus years now. But 5 senior leaders that run community programs.
Yep.
Get together in the cone of silence. Every event I've done has had some form of food at it, even in the early days of the pandemic. And nowadays we're doing virtual. I'm starting to plan back to some amount of in-person, but honestly the virtuals have been working really well. But it's a very small group, very intimate, honest conversation, and kind of in the cone of silence, friendly type of environment. And I design them so that it's not competitive, so you don't have two people from competitive companies, you don't have two people from the same company at the same one. And everybody I invite, I talk to and make sure I understand kind of what their vibe is, what their background is, what their interests are, so I can curate the group to make sure it's a really great conversation as you experienced.
Yeah, I think I've been to 3 of them. One was a virtual, and I've been to 2. I even drove. I live in Dallas, and I drove to Austin to go to one. Stayed the night in a hotel, and so I there's a lot of value in it. To some degree, I think I still talk to some of those folks, and I'm always about networking. And community people are pretty good at that kind of stuff sometimes, right?
I think community people are. I think there's an interesting, weird dynamic about the senior level folks that I'm still trying to put my finger on exactly. But I don't know if we've just been doing community so long that trying to be part of community for community's sake is tough. but it's a different dynamic with senior folks than it is with more junior folks, right? The more junior folks, I mean, you look at the CMX chat, the the C Club chat, all those. There's a lot of activity there, but it's a lot of more early on questions. I don't want to say basic because they're tough questions, but they're more early on in your career questions, and not always, of course, but there's a lot of that, and that's part of where like our Slack that's just for the Dinner 5 alumni. There's a lot of questions that get asked there that are very big questions.
A little harder to solve the problems.
Yeah, exactly. So, they kind of only apply if you're running a program, right? And who do you reach out to? Because most of the time, there's not a lot of other community people in your company, much less a peer that understands community challenges at a senior level, at a director level, right?
Yeah. So basically, I guess the way it works, and it's probably a good kind of thing for our audience is, you just basically get 5 people together, either virtual, as of recent, the last couple of years at least, but doing some on-site stuff, and just have a quick conversation around dinner. And I'll tell you what, the dinners that you do are, I mean, a couple of times this one dude just sat there and cooked some stuff, had some wine. I mean, it was awesome. Like, I can't believe he does this. It's really cool. So you made it a really nice experience, and it was a lot of fun to really get to connect with leaders at the same level, right? And as I've progressed in the years, even as a community leader, like you find even later that those conversations are super important, because there's a lot of things that you're not, you might not know you'll run into. So if I run into, so I've been talking to like Nicole Saunders as of late. She's the director of community at Zendesk. She's had that community for 5 years, and so she's grown a team. She's really scaled their community, and so she has a lot to offer. So me connecting with her, even on Peers Over Beers, but having those higher level conversations to figure out some things that I can go do, in my own organization, because we have similar communities, if you will, is just amazing. You know what I mean? So, and you're doing a great job of facilitating those conversations, getting those senior level type people together, which I think is important, because it's not always easy to find, so, and you've done a good job of finding those.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Part of the events are free. They're sponsored by, folks like Vanilla Forums and now Vanilla Higher Logic. They've been, an amazing sponsor
Vanilla
from the
Logic.
beginning. Yeah, exactly. Common Room has also pitched in, Southwest, Amplifier, some great folks, right? And I couldn't do it without them because the events are free. The price of admission, I always say, and you've heard me say this several times, is bringing others with you, right? Because that's the whole goal here, is to try and bring along people like us, right? And the best way for me to help find those is to make it an impressive experience, and then ask. Often people don't ask, but ask for the recommendation, right? And it's been an interesting process for me, because it's such a good reminder that the reason I do these 5-person events is because that's where intimacy of conversation happens, right? It's hard in a group of more than, it's the community numbers, right? 5, 15, 25, 50, 150. At each one of these marks, the social dynamic changes dramatically. And the difference between 5 people and 10 people doesn't seem like it's that big a deal numbers wise, but it's the difference between a private conversation among friends and a group. Right. And the moment it turns into a group is the moment that I start having to ask myself questions about, can I share? How much can I share? Is somebody in this group going to know my boss? Right. Are they going to bring that back? You start asking all these questions that make you kind of shut down as far as the depth of conversation.
Well, I think I maybe, like, if I was there, I wouldn't care if my boss heard what I said, but what I would care about is, I think you had something, this is just me. So I think of the intimacy part, right? You have a group of 100, 150. It's great that there's 100, 150, but you're just not going to have those really good one-on-one facilitated conversations in a group of 100 people. And you can't get as intimate, and you can't get as much stuff as you would like. You know what I mean? So I understand completely. And I
At
completely
150,
agree.
you don't have much time for yourself at all, right? You don't have much time to
Yeah.
bring
How
your
do you get
problems
your
up,
stuff
much less
out?
go into depth.
Exactly. You know, those things are more for like presenting some stuff that might be interesting and in different
Right.
ways, you know, but I love it, man. I mean, you're doing a great job, and I applaud you for, you know, continuing it for like 3 years now or longer.
Just over 3 years. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So, I mean, I just thought when you first did it, I was like, I don't know, but you've done a good job of getting sponsors to really help that, and they're more. A couple of them are community sponsors, right? You know, and so it's cool stuff, man.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah. And I have to say, you know, that's one of the interesting things about this, this whole process has been, you know, with when I went to Vanilla at the beginning of this process and said, hey, I've got this idea, or, you know, Common Room, who's been one of the more recent additions this year to the sponsorship fold. You know, when I told either one of them, I've got this event, it's only 5 people, but it's the right 5 people. They both teams instantly went, yeah, okay, we understand.
Yeah.
And I've talked to other folks that had a real hard time saying yes to the sponsorship because they were saying, well, that's not enough numbers.
Yeah.
And I kept, even though I'd say, well, yeah, but 500 people funnels into 5 people that you want to talk to, really.
Yeah.
Or 5,000 people funnel into 5 people you actually want to talk to. I'm just going to give you the decision makers in the first place, you know. And Vanilla and Common Room both did a great job of seeing that vision, and I'm really proud that they've been along the journey with me.
Yeah, maybe I should start thinking of some sponsors or something to help Peers Over Beers. I've not really pushed that at all. You know what I mean? So, anyways, so I know there's a topic that we wanted to talk about today, besides Dinner 5, which is a great topic and a great thing that you're doing there. So, why don't we talk a little bit about? Well, you kind of mentioned it, and I'll let you explain it. How about that?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I've been noticing more lately is, let me rephrase it. One of the things I'd like to see our industry do more of is looking at our journeys, right? We see this all the time when you look at, you know, when you talk to UX UI folks, when you talk to marketing folks, right? They're real big on, you know, marketing folks love the touch point maps, you know, that understand where are my communications hitting at all the right points, right?
Which I love it.
Yeah, they're great. And I think, you know, one of the things that I'm seeing more of, and I'm starting to spend more time on. So I do consulting, right? I come in, I joke, I'm the Mr. Wolf of the community industry. You got a problem, I help you come fix it.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing more and more as we try and fix those things is how much back to the basics need to take place, right? Because if your community is struggling with engagement, for instance, just to pick that one, that's a pretty common one, right? Everybody wants more engagement. I started asking some basic questions with new clients, like, how do people get into the community in the first place?
Where do they come from?
How do they go from, okay, you've got a customer community, how do they sign up?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always surprised, and this isn't any one client or even my clients, I'm hearing it from others as well, that even though some of those basic questions are at least vague, if not unclear altogether, right?
What do they say? Because I'm interested in that. If they don't know where to go get them, and, you know, like, I'm trying to understand, like, if you're building a community, it's you build it, they're not going to come. It just doesn't happen. You have to tell people about your community in a bunch of different ways.
And I mean even more fundamentally than that. I mean even looking at how are you onboarding a new customer? So let's say you get a new customer into the community.
Yep.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. You get a new customer into your company.
Yeah. Love it.
What are the emails that they get onboarded with? Do those emails in the materials, maybe they even have physical paperwork, how much of that connects to community? How easy is it from them to take a picture, you know, from an email that they get or a document that they get and be introduced to the community, the purpose of the community that sparks their interest to come over and log in? When they log in, how easy is it for them to actually go about logging in?
Yeah.
Right. Is there a delay there as you process stuff on the back end? Do they have, you know, really onerous overhead of, you know, password requirements? Is it easy to understand, you know, that you're getting an email verification and your email verification system takes an hour or 2 hours to actually send the emails out, right?
I mean,
you know,
you look at the back end of your community? I mean, most platforms that are halfway decent should have some of that baked in, right? Or at least
They should,
the
yeah.
setting to be able to change it on, hey,
Right.
when customer logs in, send a direct email automatically. You shouldn't have to be doing
Right.
shit about that.
You shouldn't, but do you know that you're not, right? There's an assumption that everything's working like it is, and then you can't figure out why nobody's signing up or why nobody's logging in a second time until you discover our stats. This is kind of where you have to start pulling these pieces apart on a really fundamental level, because it's one thing to say my engagement's not working, we need to add more content or on-site activities or do better community management. But what I've been asking a lot more of lately is, sure, that's not untrue, but let's start back a couple of steps before that. Look at your stats, and if you're seeing people drop off between the first login and no second logins, why?
Yeah.
Are they able to actually log in? Is that stat telling you that they have completed the password creation process, which is the first step? Or is there some glitch in that process that makes it easy to drop out of the workflow and never actually, you're tagging them when they log in, but they're not really logging in because they never complete the password completion process, which means they have a fundamental inability to log in a second time.
Yeah.
Because they have no password done, right? And then you start saying, okay, now we got to fix those fundamentals in order to know what's actually happening in the community, right?
Isn't that
balance
that's
that understanding.
I agree with you. I mean, but I think that's community management 101, right? Like when I think of, fair enough, like you need to make sure, if possible, people are engaging. Not everybody's going to engage in a certain way or engage the way you want to. As a matter of fact, as you know, most people don't, or if they do, maybe they're just looking at stuff, and that's stuff you can look at, in general on some of the back end of these community platforms. I do think I think that's absolutely right. So if a customer logs in or a user logs into your community and doesn't ever log in again, and you're seeing a lot of that, maybe there's something there on, maybe they're not getting the email that they're supposed to. So I'll give you an example, and it's a good point. Is when a user logs into the Reltio community today, they get an email automatically, instantly that says, "Hey, thanks for registering for the Reltio community. Click here to activate your account." Boom, click here, and then they click there and they go directly to the Reltio community, and they're logged in, or they put their password in and stuff like that, and they're good to go, right? And then from there, we have kind of this, I wouldn't call it 30, 60, 90. It's like a, every couple of days for the next, at least just maybe 3 times, they'll get an email and say, "Hey, thanks for creating your login. Here's some things that you can do. Hey, I see you haven't logged in 10 days, blah, blah, blah." So there's kind of this journey that you push as well to kind of make sure you're engaging with the customer in an automated way. You don't want to be doing this, manually to every single customer, right? So I think that, you have to create that journey to, it's one tactic to push, and a very important tactic. And if none of those work, maybe it's not launching. Maybe your initial email isn't going out. Maybe these things aren't happening. Do some testing, create a dummy login, create your Gmail account, a new account, login, and create, make sure the process is working. And if it doesn't, then there's something wrong. I mean, there's all kinds of tests that you can do from that point, so I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. And I think you're right. And I think the magic word you just said is the testing part.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I think as an industry, I won't point to any one particular person or group or community, because I think we all suffer from this in various forms. I don't think as an industry we do a good enough job of testing. I don't think we do a good enough job up front of doing usability testing as we design. I don't think we do a good enough job at the yearly rotation saying, okay, it's the year mark, let's go back and do another usability test. Think about the level of testing that e-commerce sites do.
Absolutely.
Right? It is a daily activity in some cases, in many cases. They are tweaking things regularly.
Always.
On our side, there's communities that are successful. Don't get me wrong, they're still successful, but they have never done usability testing. Not before, not during, not in 5 years in, right? And they're making tweaks and they're making improvements, but they haven't done the full-blown let's put some users in front of a formal process
Yeah.
to understand this, right? And Rich Millington, our buddy Rich Millington, posted something a couple of weeks ago talking about the homepage design, right?
Yeah,
And how
I've
most
seen
people
it.
have these community homepage designs that are much more about welcome to the site, when in reality, so many communities are destinations that people arrive at based on Google traffic.
That's right.
And the reason they get to the homepage is because they had a failure in that Google result, right? And so instead of a welcome to the experience, what that needs to be is, you clearly have had a problem. Let me help you address that problem
Yeah.
homepage. And where, it was a brilliant insight. And I think it was one that was really worth considering, what, not just your homepage, it's one example, but, how are all these pieces working? And that's, when I was at Apple and we overhauled the design of the Apple support community, one of the things that we realized was a huge, massive, vast majority of our traffic to the community came directly from somebody searching something on Google.
SEO, yeah.
And I mean, we had organic signups, sure, but realistically, somebody had a problem, they Googled it. We did a great job of SEO, which bumped our results up to the first or second result almost all the time. And they clicked the button, they'd show up at the site. And so the way that we redesigned that site and did our testing was to do Q&A pairs, right? So we did everything we could do to make sure that when somebody came, they saw a big Q with the question and a big A with the best answer, right? And there was a whole process of, solved answers, marked as solved, marked as helpful, and Apple recommends, which we had a team in place to go mark stuff that they thought was good if nobody came back and marked it themselves.
Yeah.
And bump those up above and beyond the rest of the answers, in a design that seemed very compelling when you had 4 seconds to grab somebody's attention before they said, this isn't it, go back to Google and start again, right? And our homepage
so they don't have to scroll all the answers and stuff like that.
Right.
Got it.
And even a lot of, when I've told this story before, people have said, well, yeah, but lots of sites have the solved answer. Well, yeah, now they're starting to move those up closer to the question.
Yeah.
But if you look at the site, we specifically designed it to have a Q&A pair design.
Yeah.
So it wasn't hiding the other answers, but it was putting a huge focus from a design standpoint on the Q and the A that was the best A, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Back then, they probably didn't have really awesome platforms to do all that stuff for you. So you had to develop all that stuff,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We did some custom development for that. But I think, and you're right. It's, in theory, it's community management 101, but I don't think it is actually. I think it's a more advanced version of this process.
It's a good point, because I often think that I often think this. So as much time and effort that, like, I work for a product company, so we sell, to B2B companies a product, right? And they buy it and they use the product, that kind of stuff. And so as much time and effort as our digital marketing team or marketing team, digital team spends on the main website, reltio.com. I mean, they'll spend lots and lots of money to get leads. They'll spend lots and lots of money to have, to get different people to do usability tests, to get different people to do all this stuff for the main website. You know who they have to do community.reltio.com? Chris Detzel. And that's it at the moment, and they think that, so I think that it's a good point, because I would love to have, all this budget to do usability testing, to do, to change up the website from time to time, to do some of the things that you talk about around, because now since our community is almost a year old, you're starting to get some really good SEO, right? Because we've done a good job of the content, but, and so over time that gets more and more, over time I'll hit 80%, 70% SEO, organic SEO. And right now it's not there, but it's just started. But then things I should be thinking about, exactly what you're saying, is, so people are going to get to our site through Google, and when they click on a link, would be really cool, to have that whole, whether it's a blog or whether it's a Q&A, whatever it is. One is, where's the CTA? So, because they can get the answer. So we need a good, clear CTA, because they're not logged in. So can we potentially capture that? 1 out of 100 people might log in, but if we don't make it easy for them, they're not going to log in. They just get the answer and they go. 2 is are they getting the answer that they need? I like your little thought around just have somebody go in there and just assume that this is the best answer. I like that because I haven't been doing that. And, one of the tactics that I think is important is that best answer and getting people to put that in there, but it's a hard thing to get people to do. You said a lot of good things, man. I like that. I think and you're probably right about these. I mean, I think about it, but I can't always do anything about it,
Yeah, and I think so. There's several points in there to sort of pick up on. So one is that that process of when somebody comes to the site, there's a clear CTA's call to action that moves them from here to there to there to there, and that's my goal.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've been part of a lot of community developments, even my own, which I haven't done a good enough job of in the past, of thinking about what is that journey? Have we written that journey down? Are we revisiting that journey on a regular basis to make sure it's working? Because we've also built in the measurements and the processes to pay attention to whether that's working. And B, if it's not working, what do we do about it? How do we improve that, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, we've bought a platform, it works a certain way, we've put it in place, now we're going to worry about the content management part of it, the engagement part of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, this is the challenge to you, to me, to everybody, all of us. And I've been trying to do this more with clients lately, is to say, whatever our budget is, let's set aside 30%
Some of
for
that
the testing, right? Because what I see a lot of is if you have a $100 of development, just to pick a nice non-real number, if you have $100 of development time, budget for developing a platform, we're spending $100 to get the platform in place.
Yeah.
We're spending about $50 to put the platform in place, another $30 to test the hell out of it before, during, and after, and then saving that last $20 to make sure that when we get it wrong, we still have some budget left to fix it. Right.
Yeah, I think it depends on the budget. We don't have to get into particulars, but you got a content budget, right? So if I think about what is the single most important thing I have to go do, and it's building content, that is relevant, engaging, and all those things. Something you said in there, God, I lost my thought because I thought it was a good one, around the usability stuff. Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah,
I lost my train of thought on that.
Well, yeah, and I'm always, and it's tough, right? Because community budgets, like you said, you got just Chris. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think this goes back to what we all talk about in some form, though, of there's a reason why e-commerce or marketing or the SEO team has the budgets that they have, and part of it's very simple. They've justified the outcome of those budget spends.
That's
and
right.
so in order, I said I was going to do a thing, and I did the thing. If you give me 20% more budget, I can do 20% more output or 40% more output. Okay, cool. And then here's the way I'm going to prove that to you, and then I prove it to you, and then on and on and back and back and back.
No, it's a very good point. I think that's the exact way of how to handle that, Jake. And my thought came back is, a lot of times it is usability, or testing, but it's also looking at the data around. So if you care about SEO, organic SEO, and all that kind of stuff, the positive is that Google Analytics is tracking all the things people are clicking on. And so, I'll give you an example. Is the other day I was looking at the analytics, and I saw that for some reason there's this link that I go to and I click on it, or it's like this error link, and I'm like, what the hell is this? This is over the last month been clicked on 100 times, but why? What's going on? And so a lot of times whenever you go into the analytics and you can find hints of where people are having problems, either in the login the area, in the, in some part of the platform, and so you have to go dig to find those answers. But the positive is that the analytics are there, the data is there. And so you don't have to just blindly think, oh, that piece. So you do the testing, but you also look at what's working, what's not, through whatever analytics thing that you have. But in this case, for me, a lot of it is the Google Analytics, right? Is just look at that, and it'll tell you, go to your SEO person and say, what the hell is this? And then go to your platform people and say, hey, what the heck is this? If you don't know. And so I think you have to do a lot of research, a lot of focus, and then fix it. Whatever that is, because it's clicked on 100 times in a month and it's going nowhere. that's a problem. Why is it being clicked on 100 times a month? Who's clicking on it? Who, maybe that's a user issue, a problem that if you fix it, then maybe you get 10% of those people back and they actually able to log in or do whatever they're trying to do,
Yeah, and I think so. Several things to follow up there. One is that there's an assumption that, or not even an assumption, a mindset. I think that back to this idea of if I've got $100 to build my platform. I don't mean all the content. I don't mean the day-to-day. I don't mean the staffing. I just mean like to technically put a platform in place. I got $100 to do it. So I'm going to get as much functionality out of that $100 as I can, and then I'll be done. Because if we test it right, it'll all work, right? If we Q&A test it, not usability test it, then everything's going to work and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But the reality is the reason I keep trying to pull that budget back to about $70 and keep the $30 in reserve, or whatever the number is you want to do, right, is because we always find those things you're talking about, right? That weird error that nobody could have foreseen.
Yeah.
The strange user behavior that nobody could have foreseen. You put stuff in front of users, especially community users, they're going to come up with some weird use cases that you've never in a million years thought of. And it's not your fault. It's just reality, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just how things work. And I think that's, again, we can really look to our colleagues in e-commerce and say, they know that. They're prepared for that. They don't get upset when they've discovered one. They get kind of excited and celebrate that they found one, right? They know how to
we know the problem. I bet we can. And then for the next few weeks after you fix it, they see, that's what the issue was. They do that for the the main digital sites anyways, like that. They're trying to get leads and stuff like that, not just in e-commerce, but a company like ours, they spend a lot of time and effort and data collecting on, why is, it could be like, this chat used to create a bunch of leads. For the last 2 months, it hasn't created hardly any leads in comparison to the last, and you're like, okay, let's go test that chat. What changed from 2 months ago? This, and then they can go pinpoint exactly what that problem was. You know what I mean? So maybe somebody moved the chat up to the top or to the bottom or to the side or something happened, and then they'll figure it out, so it's a good point.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, exactly. And there's a, I'll say a thing, and then we can come back as a different topic to dig in on the the almost certain reaction of people listening in to say who are going to say, yeah, but that's not possible for me. But bear with me. The development process of moving that that $100 back to $70, so you have 30 in reserve to fix things that will naturally, obviously, come up. That's also important to do for us as leaders. Because we know for a fact that we need to be, dedicating more time to stuff that is the random, the administrative, the data research, all that stuff that I don't know that we're, as an industry, that we generally put enough time into. And I'll give you an example, or more specific, some background. Let's say, sorry, I've got the allergies, so I'm trying not to cough right now.
No worries.
When I first started business years ago, I read this really great Motley Fool article that was talking about how, when you, as an entrepreneur, it's the rule of thirds, how you spend your time. A third of your day goes to doing the work. A third of your day goes to finding the next bit of work. And a third of your day goes to all the administrative overhead that work requires. And I remember at the time, this was like literally my first week of being a consultant, right, years ago. I remember just that blowing my mind, going, you mean I'm going to only get to spend a third of my time doing the cool stuff that I wanted to be the consultant for? But it's true. And it's, maybe the numbers aren't exactly right. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's three components, right, that all have to be making up your workday. And, to your point about like looking at the Google Analytics, right, there's this reactive, maybe, proactive reactive split, that you have your proactive activities that you need to put forth these sort of dashboards. You needed to get these sort of content pieces in place because somebody said in the knowledge base these 5 things have to exist. You have to moderate. Those are the proactive things that you know about. But you also have to be setting aside time to work the business for yourself, right? And figure out, how do I just go look at Google Analytics with no particular point in mind other than what's going on here, right? What am I noticing? And allow your creative brain to kind of take over and start seeing patterns, paying attention to oddities, that sort of stuff. And there's kind of the proactive piece is driven by questions, right? How are we going to do X? How are we going to get this result? And how do you plan for that? The reactive piece, we don't put enough attention into. Do you have 3 hours a week set aside to make sure that you're looking at Google Analytics and making sure that that's all where it should be and there's no oddities?
Yeah.
Probably not, because you're busy, because you don't have enough
Yeah.
time, because you don't have enough budget, right? Because you only one guy. And how do you protect that? How do you make that time for yourself? It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, if I look at my own kind of career, even into last year to this year with Reltio, I feel like there's some really good things I've done and positive things, but because of some of those good things, now everybody wants a part of a community, and
Right.
which is good, but now, I've got to kind of look at what is the next step. So the next step for me is trying to get somebody else in here to really run the day-to-day type stuff so I can do more of those strategic type of things. Because, when I have meetings on my goddamn calendar all day, every day, like how can I even do any work of thinking about community and everything else,
Right.
and, but some of the big things that those meetings, some of them are really important to kind of go back to your, I don't know if it was if we talked about this, but we definitely talked about it before the show, is kind of this, journey of where a customer starts for onboarding. So when a customer joins your organization, where is community in the conversation? That's an extremely important piece, right? So customer needs to know about the community, the academy, and some other places to go so that they can get educated, so that they can get help. And if we're not talking about those things, then they're not really ever going to know about it. I mean, unless they stumble upon it on your website or whatever, right? And so those are the conversations I want to have and be in. But sometimes it's hard to do that and then do the day-to-day and everything else. And, so, I agree. I think, as thirds, the three things you talked about are good, but, there's also more things in there when you're a one-person team and to some degree, I've got a lot of people bought into it, which is a good problem to have, but also you have to kind of rein things in and say, look, I've got to do things on my community, and that has to be a big part of my time. And spending that time doing the shit that you just mentioned, it's highly important. So
well, and you nailed it, right? You have to make that. You have to draw those boundaries, right? You have to draw those pushbacks. The reality is, as an entrepreneur, it is hard to do. Okay, how am I going to spend a third of my time actually doing the stuff that makes me the money?
Yeah.
Right. But if I don't do the administrative stuff and pay my taxes, that's a huge problem. Right. If I don't look for the next business, then I'm not ready. I have no pipeline for when client A ends and I need client B to replace them. Right.
Yeah.
So you cannot get away from the reality that as hard as that is, it's a reality you can't fight. So the question is, and I'm not saying you, I mean all of us.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the challenge here, and this is what I was, sort of prefacing before I even said it a minute ago, was I know that the people listening are going to be like, yeah, but I don't have any time for this. I don't have any time for that kind of work. All I can do is spend my day, keeping up. Sure, and I understand it, and I absolutely sympathize with it. The trick is, it is a reality. If you want to grow, that has to have some time to be able to prove your growth and to allow you to draw your boundaries, right?
And you have to start saying
moderating
no
on the beach.
You have to sometimes say no to. Right. You've got to look at what meetings are the most important to take those, and then stop taking the others. I've started doing that this year, and it's somewhat free. Now I like, oh, I have some time now to do this thing, so maybe I should go do this thing. So, well, Jake.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, the last point I'll make as we sum up here: stop moderating on the beach. Because I know it's important. I know we love our community members, but this is caregiver syndrome, right? If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else worth a damn. And, when we say yes to moderating on the beach because there's nobody else there, the company doesn't have the ability to feel enough pain to say we need to solve this, right? And you are not keeping your brain straight so that you can come back to work after your vacation where you've actually set it aside, actually allowed yourself to refresh, and so you can be good to your community members, to your community program, to your teammates, all that stuff, right? So stop moderating on the beach. I need a t-shirt for that.
I like it. And something it reminds me, and I'll say this and we got to go, but I think it's important to know that we're not doing this just because we love it. We do love it, I think, but we're doing it for a business. So there has to be business outcomes to those communities. And you really have to focus in on what those outcomes are for the business so that you can grow your community, so that you can get headcount, so that you can get budget to do some of the things that you want to do and all that kind of stuff. Nicole and I have talked about this before, is you got to prove it before, you can do it, or you need to prove it out. And then, it's chicken before the egg stuff. So, but you're also right. You can't do everything. So you also have to kind of be smart about your time and energy and where you're spending it, with your community. So
if you keep saying yes, they're going to keep accepting it, because why wouldn't they, right? If you say no, I have a boundary there, I have an incapability there, this is not possible that way. If you want this outcome, and stop talking about ROI, start talking about outcomes, right?
Yeah.
If you want this outcome, then you will need to do these things. It's the yes, but yes, I can do it, but I can't do it alone. Right?
That could be the next thing. What does a business outcome look like? I like it. Well, Jake, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it. My name's Chris Detzel, and thanks for coming to another Peers Over Beers. And
yeah, I'm Jake McKee. You can find out more about Dinner 5 at dinner5.org or about me at jakemckee.com.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.